Welcome to Zeitgeist Design and Production. I'm Becky Kiefer, studio director. And if you think about it, time travel is the ultimate experience. It's the most immersive and interactive attraction ever imagined. It's the proverbial hang on for the ride of your life, right? And here in the Zeitgeist Creative Studio in Pasadena, California, time is always of the essence. This is where themed entertainment veterans Ryan Harmon and Joe Lancicero study the past and spin the present envisioning the future of UXIRL, user experience in real life. The Spirit of the Time Zoomcast offers a sneak peek behind the themes. Each month, we invite one incredibly talented and accomplished colleague along for a ride on our time machine. We journey through that person's career, unraveling the mystery of what makes a guest experience timely, yet timeless. So climbing aboard our time machine today is the proverbial man behind the curtain. Jim Steinmeyer is one of the world's foremost illusion designers for themed entertainment, theater, and television. If you've ever seen Doug Henning, David Copperfield, Ricky and Jay, or Penn and Teller, you've probably seen his work. Jim is the author of a number of books about magic history and illusion design. He's a former Disney Imagineer, the writer and producer of A&E's 4-hour documentary, The History of Magic, a contributing editor to Magic Magazine, and a former 2-time president of the legendary Magic Castle in Hollywood. It's now my pleasure to introduce our time machine pilots, Zeitgeist President and Chief Creative Officer Ryan Harmon, and Zeitgeist Executive Vice President and Chief Art Director, Joe Lancicero, along with the Magic Man himself, Jim Steinmeyer.
All right. Oh my God.
It's always a trip being on this time machine, Ryan.
So you know how I love circles of time?
Yeah.
I got this book that Jim wrote, and I went back to 1890 and found this little kid in New York named Harry Houdini and gave him a copy and let him read all about how to make things disappear. And so now, what came first, Jim's book or Harry Houdini?
It's blowing my mind. It's a chicken and egg situation.
I know, totally. So Jim, welcome aboard.
I'm going to add that to my credits now that I inspired Houdini. Hey, thanks.
Let me put on the regular glasses here.
Wow, and thank Becky for that wonderful introduction. Wow.
Yes, thank you. So Jim, we're so excited to have you on board our time machine today. We're going to through your past and stop at different milestones.
Okay.
And talk about what makes an experience timely and timeless.
So where's our first stop today, Ryan?
All right. Let's set the controls. We are going to 1973, and we are in Chicago. Jim, tell us what we're doing here.
1973. Well, that's me as a kid magician. I grew up outside of Chicago, and I visited the magic shops in Chicago because at that time, that's what you did. There were great clubs, and there were magic shops, and you learned, from associating with other people. And at that time, I was doing my own kind of contest act, which wasn't great, but I was winning awards in Chicago and doing my own birthday party shows and all that stuff. And then I started working with other performers right around that time, which was what was significant to me because it gave me a chance to work with kind of better performers and more interesting projects. And it was an inspiration to me.
Wow.
Great city for magic, Chicago. Great magicians and great old vaudeville tradition. And all the old vaudevillians were still there.
Wow. How cool. Wow. So if we just move a little forward to 1976, still here in Chicago, I heard you have a little business you're trying to pitch to a famous magician.
I was, let's see. So I graduated high school that year, and I was starting at Loyola University in Chicago, and I decided to send a letter to Doug Henning and say, who was doing television specials at that time. Remember those days? Those fantastic television specials.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, you interested in new material? You interested in any new ideas for your television special? So I sent him photos of an idea, and I contacted him, and much to my surprise, the phone rang, and he, when you're a kid, you don't even know that's going to happen. And he called and he went, yeah, I'm really interested in seeing it. So I met Doug, and my brother and I took and showed him the trick that I've been working on, and that started in association with Doug Henning, freelancing material to him for his television shows.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay. So now we're going to put the control and we're going to move west to Los Angeles. What's happening now in Los Angeles? This is just in 1981.
Yeah, well, so I graduated and I was working on a book about magic at the time. And when I graduated, Doug called again and said, if you have ideas, I'm working on some stuff. And we met and went through material, and he called me back and he said, look, I'll offer you 1 year of work, which is 6 months on a television special and 6 months on a Broadway show, but you have to move out to Los Angeles. And then we're going to move you to New York, and then you're done. After 1 year, you're done if you're willing to do that.
Right.
So, of course, who would not do that, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
I moved to Los Angeles. I graduated from college and I got on a plane and moved to Los Angeles to work for Doug Henning. And I ended up working with him, of course, in his company for 6 years before he retired. It was actually 2 Broadway shows, a number of tours, a number of television appearances and specials. So it was fantastic way of kind of seeing that business from the inside.
So what was Doug like? Because I remember kind of the long hippie hair,
Yeah.
the big mustache, and
Yeah.
kind of the overbite, and just
The
everything
hip-
was
kind of
very
a hippie
magical.
dippy kind of,
Yeah.
He had a really light touch and really light attitude about magic, which was fantastic. And of course, at that time was completely different than anybody had done, because it was all magic was still all kind of mysterioso, tuxedo stuff. And he really was that guy. He was like really genuine. And the people who worked for him, not just me, I mean, the entire company, they just worked hard because they loved him. He was really sincere. He was a great boss. And you knew how excited he was by bringing this to an audience. So of course, everybody worked hard to help him in that.
So Jim, there may be people watching, listening today, believe it or not, who may not know that much about Doug Henning. So just give a quick little background for them.
He was a Canadian magician who graduated from school and decided to get a Canadian Arts Council grant on the theory that magic is a theatrical art, is really a theatrical art. And he came to Los Angeles and studied with magicians at the Magic Castle, and put together a show called Spellbound in Canada that was then brought to Broadway and completely rewritten and turned into a funny kind of goofy little show called The Magic Show, which ended up being one of the longest running shows in Broadway history because it was just so unpretentious and so simple. Doug was with the show for about a year, and then he started doing television specials and became a big star and toured, did Las Vegas, did a bunch of shows. Yeah.
Wow.
So I know in the 80s that my friend Craig Hanna from Think Well, I don't know if you're listening,
Yep,
Craig,
absolutely.
but I heard that Craig had a meeting with Doug, and Doug had the vision for some sort of magic theme park. And the story Craig tells is that they were there looking at a model, and there was a building over a lake. And Craig asked Doug how that illusion would work. And Doug looked at him very seriously and said, Craig, the building really is going to float. So could you tell us a little bit about his theme park?
Well, Doug's interest through a lot of his career was transcendental meditation.
Okay.
And everyone who worked with him kind of dealt with that. It was what he used to relax. And then he also knew Maharishi, who was the leader of that movement. And so he was always inspired by him. And at the end of his career, why he retired is he decided that he wanted to work with Maharishi on different projects. And one of those was the idea of a theme park that was about transcendental meditation. I would say, because Doug was a magician, I would say that the building wasn't really going to float. And I say that because I actually figured out how it was going to work when I worked with Doug.
Okay.
So I don't know what he told Craig, because I wasn't involved at that time in that project. Doug had kind of retired from magic. But I would say that when I was working on it, I knew how that building was going to float. Yeah.
Okay.
So should we travel east again? now?
Yes.
Right.
Let's go back to New
Okay.
York. It's 84, and you're on Broadway.
Woo.
Yeah, so Doug brought me to New York, and we worked on a huge Broadway production, which was kind of famous as a big crashing Broadway show called Merlin. It actually ran 8 months, and it was successful in its own way, but it was one of those shows that everybody talked about. Cheetah Rivera, Nathan Lane's first Broadway musical.
Oh, wow.
And it was a big multi-million-dollar production in the era when that made headlines. and
Wow.
full of magic, which was really, really fun to do. The magic and that stuff was really well received. But the show was just kind of a moderate success. Ran about 8 months and stopped.
So what was the difference between that and Spellbound? Spellbound was more.
Well, Spellbound is the show that turned into the magic show. Spellbound was a kind of light, very light touch, very simple kind of show about magic that heated up in Canada. And when Merlin came back, that was his second Broadway show. They basically decided they were going to make this a huge production and put lots of sets, lots of costumes into it, make it a big deal. And we opened while we were working on the show. They were blasting in the theater across the street. And we were saying, what's that? And they said, it's some show from England called Cats.
Oh.
And that was the show that opened across the street from us, just after
Wow.
Merlin. So Merlin did okay. The magic was fantastic and people loved it. But the show at that era was Cats. Yeah.
Did I hear you say Nathan Lane was in the production?
Yeah.
Was in Merlin.
Was he well known at the time?
He was just becoming well known as a Broadway actor. He had done a number of comedies. He was, of course, screamingly funny and really witty. But this really put him through the ringer, as it did everybody in the cast, because they were making changes constantly to the show, and they were constantly learning new scripts and all that stuff. And poor Nathan I think, got the worst of it as the comic relief.
Wow.
Too bad.
Good.
All right, you want to take us back across
Let's head west again.
Okay.
in Glendale and
Glendale.
1986.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, what happened there?
Well, so when I worked with Doug did a presentation at Imagineering, 1401 Flower,
Wow.
and he did a
And rest in
presentation.
peace,
Yeah, soon to
apparently.
be history.
Yeah, very
Yeah,
sad.
He did a presentation to a bunch of Imagineers about magic and entertainment and how his thoughts about combining it. And I was in the back of the room because I brought stuff in and helped him put the presentation together because I was working for him. And when he retired in 1986, I got a call from Peggy Van Pelt, because of course that was her job at that time, was
Right.
headhunter. And so she said, I know you're out of work because Doug just retired, and would you come in and talk to us in Imagineering, which was a surprise to me. I'd never thought of that. So yeah, I went in and interviewed, and of course they were in one of their big staffing up movements at that time. And I started working with Rick Rothschild's group, themed entertainment and entertainment centers, which was kind of a short-lived idea at Imagineering, but it was a really ambitious idea. And they were great people, as was all that stuff at that era, which is also right around that era when I met you guys, but on completely different stuff. We were working with Joe Rohde was in that group, and Bill Stout was a freelancer.
Yeah.
And it was a really fantastic group of people, and
Yeah.
putting theme parks together.
So how did you have an affinity for theme parks? Did you know about theme parks? Had you been to any theme parks at that point?
I would say I was just a moderate theme park fan at that time, not a Disney nut at all. And I was kind of shocked, kind of like, it was one of those things like, I'm sorry, you want to hire me for what? And then of course at that time, all I could figure out was that what they had to want me doing illusions, right? You want me to work in the special effects department, right? I think you want me to work in the special effects department, right? And they went, no, we have something called concept design, which of course is, its own thing. So I actually never worked in special effects. I did special effects for stuff, including some stuff with you guys, but I never actually worked in that department. I was always in concept design for shows. And so that was how I worked at Imagineering for about 10 years.
Yeah, but word did get out.
Yes, word got
because at that time I was working on Toontown at Disneyland.
Okay.
And we were going to do this Roger Rabbit ride.
Right. Oh,
And
yeah.
we wanted to capture some of the kind of the quintessential moments from the movie, and one of them was where Roger Rabbit puts a portable hole against
Right.
the wall,
Yeah.
which allows you to go through a solid wall.
Yeah.
So we had some high-powered, big-name tech people there at the time who I won't mention. And so of course we were told to go to him because he would have the solution, right? So he comes back in with, I don't even think they had PowerPoint at that time. He had charts and papers and things. Anyway, a very elaborate scheme with, well, we're going to pull this scrim up and turn this camera on and turn these lights off and pull this scrim and then these lights and then the show action thing. And we're all sitting there and go, okay. And we just spent the entire budget of the ride.
Right.
So the word got out that there's this guy, this magician who worked with Doug Henning and can make things disappear. So we said, well, he's the guy to go to. So we go to Jim, and Jim finished the rest of the story.
Well, it's that thing of, like half the job is showing up. It's like who you have lunch with. What trailer was I working in? Like who was I talking to? When I had coffee, whose office did I used to wander in and go, hey, how's it going today?
Right.
And that's what that was. So Andrea Favilli, who was doing concept art for you guys, was working on stuff. And I went, well, what's this? And he went, oh, we're trying to figure out this black hole thing. And I said, you can't do that. That's not going to work. And whatever he did, of course, he talked to you guys. Joe at that time was the designer. Yeah. And secret was, of course, that you had to treat it like a magic trick. And you had to use the ride approach. The sequence of the ride has to take you on the progression that, like a magician, shows a hat empty, rolls up his sleeve, reaches inside, pulls out the rabbit. You can't just pull out the rabbit. You have to do all the steps to set it up. And so the little trick was to use the ride approach to set it up so that by the time the trick happens, you've actually seen a whole trick. And so I talked to Andrea and then you guys contacted me, and then I was kind of going, well, are they going to do this? And my memory is about 6 months later, somebody said, would you come over to Tahunga and take a look at this? And I said, take a look at what? And they said, the Roger Rabbit ride. And so I did. And they were in the middle of building this thing, and it was really fantastic. And we did some troubleshooting on it. And I did another one or two little ideas that were part of that ride. And it was fantastic. So I did do some special effects consulting while I was there, but that was part of the fun of, Imagineering, is that if you were there and you were just available to things, you'd be called in for certain things. Yeah. And you weren't always sure why. Yeah.
Another one, I think when you and I first met, maybe, I don't know, 89, 90, I was working with Rick Rothschild on the Plectu's Fantastic Galactic Review, which I had the honor of pitching my scene to Michael Jackson. I shook his glove. And you were brought aboard to help figure out how to make an animatronic moonwalk. Tell us about that.
And I had done a model for Imagineering of a way to do that using illusion principles, not a moonshot of an actual figure that moonwalk, but kind of using illusions to put that together to hide things. And so I had, that's why I was originally brought into that. And then I think I ended up doing a couple other things as part of that presentation as well. Okay. So I bounced around and occasionally did some magic stuff at the Imagineering, and often did concept and show stuff, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue. And let's talk a little about some of your concept work.
Yeah, let's talk about how you went from illusion designer to songwriter.
Oh, wow!
For a famous show called Food Rocks.
Food Rocks was the redo of Kitchen Cabaret. Kitchen Cabaret was dearly beloved, of course.
I love
the original. And Rolly Crump did the original, and he was called back in to do the redo of the Food Pavilion when we did it for Nestle. And I remember we went down there and saw Kitchen Cabaret, which was kind of an old show. It aged quickly. Yeah. But Rolly, who was really one of those old Imagineers, the original guys, they just didn't screw around. They just went bang, 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 bang. Yeah. And Rolly said, Kitchen Cabaret is right, but it's the wrong vernacular because it's a 40s cabaret. And 40s cabaret is too far away and no one gets it anymore. Yeah. And what we need to do is we need to take that idea and we need to modernize, bring it up to date, and it should be a rock concert. And so what we did is we redid it as a rock concert with contemporary songs, kind of great classic rock songs, and the artists who did them. We invited them to sing their versions of their songs, which were all rewritten for food messages. Some of them did it, some of them approved sound alikes, and we did Food Rocks, which was a song, which was a brief, short little show all about good nutrition, and it was all told through classic rock songs. So it was completely amazing to do and fun to do. There were about 8 or 10 songs in it, but we had to write about 40 songs to develop it,
Right.
to get different people to get on board. So yeah, one of those huge Disney, productions.
So tell us some of the artists that you got to work with who were in the show, because I don't remember.
Yeah,
And of
I
course,
mean, Peter Gabriel,
Disney.
we had people do it, like Peter Gabriel and Sting. I say do it, approve what they did. They approved sound alikes for it.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And Cher did the same thing, approved the sound alike. But there were other people like Little Richard and Neil Sedaka who did their own songs, came in, and they kind of said, no one's going to sound like us doing it. We're going to do it. We redid Bohemian Rhapsody, and Disney Disney at that time owned the Queen catalog, and they said no guitar is going to sound like Brian May, so we're going to send you the original tracks, and you're going to use it.
Oh, cool.
Oh, it was really this kind of amazing mix of re-recorded songs and original artists coming in and redoing it. My memory is Little Richard had a lot of trouble singing it because he'd been singing Tutti Frutti for many years, and when we rewrote the lyrics, he was constantly going up on the lyrics because, of course, he was on autopilot.
Oh, right.
But it was great. They were really supportive, and the show was really great, a lot of fun to do.
Wow. Did they ever release a soundtrack or anything?
They never released the soundtrack of it. I know there are some versions of it floating around out there, but they never actually released the soundtrack of it.
Yeah.
Probably huge rights issues.
I'm sure it was a huge rights issue.
Yeah.
Wow. So before we move forward in time, I mean, Imagineering, like I said earlier, I think what's great about what you brought to it in all the things that you did was the magic mindset, and that it was performance and that was theatrical. And I love what you said a moment ago about, how you set up the whole thing. And I would hope that any young, future Imagineers, future theme park designers remember that it starts, first as, you're going to entertain the audience, and in our interviews with Jim leading up to this, I was asking him about, what makes a great magician. So maybe you want to just mention that.
Yeah.
It's really, it's really a personal connection again, and it's really storytelling. Now, we say storytelling, and that sounds really intimidating, and you kind of go, well, all the backstory and all that stuff. But you have to realize, a 3-minute song lyrics is storytelling.
Yeah.
Okay. A good joke is storytelling. Okay, that's it might be a minute long, but it has a premise. You develop the premise, it goes somewhere, it surprises people, there's a laugh at the end. So those stories are embedded and magic tricks are the same way. That's my point. Is that that whole thing of taking the audience through the progression of it. It's a little story, and it takes you on one journey. It gives you a little surprise at the end. It leaves you on a different level than you thought you were going to end up on, and that's successful. And that's, I think the secret of all the great Disney stuff is the same way. They don't necessarily need volumes and volumes and volumes of backstory to tell those stories. Of course, many of them do because you've seen the films.
Right.
But, it's just that progression that you feel that you're on a journey of understanding with it. And that's the same thing in magic.
Words of wisdom. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, well, and the other beautiful thing for young people is that the answer, as you just described, is not always technology. It's not always, the expensive answer. Sometimes it can be a simple illusion or something that, just a classic thing. And that it's not about anyone knowing what the technology is. It's the story and the guest experience and making whatever it is into magic. Right? It should.
Magicians are famous for staying away from technology.
Yes.
Because no one actually wants to depend on something that the battery is going to give out, and that's your reputation. Yeah. And so magicians, the little secret is that magicians, love a rubber band in their hand.
What?
Yeah, it's a rubber band.
Yeah, or a little piece of thread, or a little piece of black fabric, or a little piece of Scotch tape, or some incredibly minimal thing that they can exploit in a really amazing way. And that's kind of behind the scenes. What excites magicians is like how to get a maximum out of a minimal thing. And I think that that's, you know, that the theory of that is also amazing kind of in theme park design.
Yeah. All right. So,
Move on.
so if we move forward to
Okay.
what looks like 1994. So 7 years have passed and your Disney career's closing down.
Or not.
Or not, or
yeah, where are we?
Where
now?
are we now?
Well, I was a consultant to Imagineering, and of course, eventually you just kind of do fewer and fewer projects. But around that time, 94, I think I was still doing stuff with Imagineering, but I was now as a consultant, I was asked from a completely different division, a new division called Disney Theatrical, to do the effects for Beauty and the Beast.
Ooh.
So that was the third Broadway show I worked on, because I did Doug's Merlin. I did
Right.
Doug's Return to Broadway, which was a touring show. It was all magic when Doug came back. And then I went back and did Beauty and the Beast and did those effects. And that was completely fantastic. Yeah. The first one, 94, and that was the first Disney Broadway show.
Yeah.
That's when they decided that they were going to take the film and translate it onto a stage show and put it on stage. So yeah, it was a really, really big adventure. The guys that did it, Rob Roth and Steinmeyer and Matt West, came out of the parks, and they wrestled us to the ground, and they said, we're gonna do this as a Broadway show. And they were amazingly creative and diligent, and they sold Michael Eisner on it in the days that's what you did. You know, you marched up to the studio and said, this is what we want to do. And part of that was that they needed demonstrations. So when Michael Eisner said, but how are you going to have a head in a cup? How are you going to have the beast transform? How are you going to, you can't do that stuff. They needed to be able to show him and demonstrate how that was possible on stage. So it was a really exciting project, and it opened in Texas and then went to Broadway at the Palace Theater and went on and on and on. I was only involved at the beginning of it, but when they went on to other Broadway shows, I did those as well. So I did Mary Poppins and did the sequence of stuff coming out of her bag, and I came back to do Aladdin.
Wait. How does all that stuff come out of the bag? Because I sat there like my mind is blown.
Is he allowed to
No, you don't have to tell us. But
Well, it's interesting. You know, it's just like what Joe was saying earlier, and I use this when I talk to magicians about, you know, magic on stage. If that whole number, when she unpacks her bag,
yeah,
that tells a story, because everything that comes out of that bag tells you something about her.
right.
You know, one of the first things that comes out is a full-length mirror, because she is vain.
Right.
Okay. And you know, you see everything that's making her mind up about this. And the very last thing that comes out of the bag is a bundle of bedclothes that she shakes out, and it turns into her bed. And at the end of the song, what you realize is she's going to stay. She's decided to stay with the kids. And so what happens is you actually see a progression of who she is and what she's thinking by the nature of that song and by the magic, by what's actually happening because she's a magical person. So all those things are fantastic, and they tell part of the story. And then I was brought back to do Aladdin, which for the flying carpet and the entrance of the genie when it did Broadway. So yeah, it was lots of fun.
So do you have to think differently when you're designing magic for non-magicians? Because you know, they're in most cases, these Broadway shows, they're actors. So is there a different?
It's different. It's different. Advantages and disadvantages. I mean, advantages in that, you know, we don't have to, you know, show everything empty, you know, have the hat examined, you know, before you do the magic. But the disadvantage of that too is that you have to do something that sets it up within the context of the story. And yeah, it has to be something that an actor can handle. And a good actor, you know, a good actor is as committed to it as a magician, and you know, brings a tremendous amount of performance to it. So that's all part of it too.
So did you work directly with the actors as well? I mean, besides designing the actual physical tricks, then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll work with at least the original cast, the people that are doing it, and take them through the sequences. And you know, at first it doesn't work with them. You know, at first they can't do it, and then we just kind of stay at it. And it's like any training, any rehearsal process.
Yeah. Okay. Were there any tricks that failed that you designed? Right? Are you at liberty to talk about them?
Sometimes you know, a couple of things are really adventurous, and then a couple things, you know, you just don't need them in the show. we make plans for stuff and then there just isn't enough time to use them. You try to not actually build something that won't be in the show.
Right.
That's a bit of a commitment. You try to do all that stuff up front. But yeah, of course, we always make plans that are a little more ambitious than what we end up with.
Yeah. So it sounds like besides the Disney shows, there were more Broadway and big theatrical productions. Maybe talk a little bit about Into the Woods with Vanessa Williams and working with Ricky Jay off Broadway. Some of those.
Yeah, so I ended up kind of going back to do kind of special stuff when there was special stuff that had to be done in shows. Into the Woods is a great show because it's all about fairy tales, and there are a number of magical moments in that. So when that went back to Broadway, I was called in to do that. Really great, beautiful production. It was done by Douglas Schmidt, the designer in San Francisco. And I went back to do some specifically magic stuff. Ricky Jay's 2 shows that were off Broadway in New York that were really successful. And Ricky was an old friend. So yeah, it's been fun to be called back and kind of given special projects. And yeah.
Did you live in?
Always another one around the corner.
Were you in New York or were you always living in LA?
I would go to New York for specific stuff, but I was always based in LA. Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
So like you mentioned working with the art director for Into the Woods. I imagine just like a theme park dragon is very collaborative. So you're working with the director, probably working with the writer. I guess my question is just how collaborative is it? I mean, can you affect your design? Say you're designing this magic trick and you say, well, I need this wall to do this and that to do that. I mean, do they say, okay, here's the set, Jim, and we need this to do that?
So yeah, you're asking all the right questions. And of course, there's no simple answer. So if only I got to say, okay, I need the set to be like this. What I usually say is, okay, I'd like the set to be like this. And then of course there are discussions. And it's 100% collaborative. And it's funny because I see other things that other magicians are involved in. And I think, oh man, he was so lucky he got the set designer to do that for him. And then I hear the story and we're all doing the same thing. We're all adjusting. So, Joe is on the other side of this, how this works. Someone says, I'd really love it to be like this. And you say, here's the problem is I can't do it quite like that. We need to hold a certain look. But what else can we talk about? So somewhere we meet in the middle, and the idea is having enough experience, that's the goal, and a range of enough experience that you can bring it in. So you don't only have one solution. You can work with people and you can listen to what they feel is important about the role or the scene or the costume or the art direction or the song or the way it's written. And you're not just mowing over everything they do. The thing about a Broadway show is that, everything is subservient to everything else. Yeah. The very first one of these I did, at that time I knew Orson Welles, who was a huge magic fan, big magic fan, very talented magician, big guy, and also very experienced with magic. And he told me some of the best advice I'd ever been given. He said, never fall in love with anything in a Broadway show because it'll get cut. If you think that song is fantastic, it'll go. If you think that set is important, it'll go. And that's really true. Everything is subservient to the whole show. And everything's in flux until it all gets locked down. So yeah, you have to roll with the punches.
Yeah. Again, for all those young people out there, that is a super important piece of advice. Never fall in love with anything, right? And that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Yes.
And that there's always somebody, hopefully, that has got that 80,000 view look at things that says, I know you love that little effect thing or that magic thing, but here's why it doesn't work. And hopefully they're right and listen to them.
But that's so easier said than done.
I know.
The story of our lives is falling in love with stuff that's gotten cut. I know. The best stuff is always the stuff that gets cut, but that's okay.
Yeah. But then I always have to remind, when I was in the position of authority on some of these things, just remember the guest or the audience only sees what they see.
Right.
They'll never know that great scene that you wanted to do that got cut, or that great trick that you want to do that got cut. So
yeah.
And all that stuff is experience also. Solving those problems, even if they're not used, it's very hard to tell people how valuable that will be. having been through that experience of developing something, even if it's not used, even if it fell short. Oh my God, those are the most valuable experiences, because you almost got it there, and now you draw from those things constantly.
Yeah. So here we are in the 90s, early 2000s, and let's talk about how magic is evolving from the stage to the television and what role you've been playing in that.
So yeah, of course, I worked with a bunch of magicians who did television shows like Doug Henning and David Copperfield, and I did some stuff with Siegfried and Roy for their Las Vegas shows and for their television specials. And I ended up doing some specialty kind of specials, something for NBC called The Hidden Secrets of Magic, which was about historical magic that had gotten lost, and a show for A&E that was a series called The Story of Magic, which was a 4-hour documentary about kind of where magic came from and performance magic and who the great magicians were. And that was narrated by Ricky Jay. And it was great fun to do, to kind of put that on video and to put that out there for people to see. So yeah, television has played a really important part in all that.
So you just kind of glossed over a name and what I think was one of the most amazing TV magic moments ever, and that was David Copperfield and the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah. Tell us how you.
So I came up with that idea, and David heard about it and contacted me and said, I want to do this on my show. And he ended up doing it on his television special. And he made it bigger. He made it, I say bigger, but like the whole production elements of it bigger. Of course, the statue's the same size than what I had originally conceived it as, but he ended up framing an entire show around it, of course. And it was really famous. And it was really a trick that was developed specifically. I mean, I think in many ways there were tricks right around that time that were innovative because they were being developed as both combinations of kind of stage magic, but also applied to television. And, the secret of that stuff is that, if I come to the foreground and the statue is in the background, I'm as big as the Statue of Liberty.
Right.
And so, I can still be the conductor. I can still be the magician and do that. Whereas if I do it, live and I'm standing there, I'm a tiny little ant, at the base of this thing. So, part of that is that it actually lets you take kind of a magic sensibility, a magician sensibility, and apply that to television and apply that to a television special. So yeah, that was a big important trick for him.
Right. Yeah. So you just brought up something I think was really important. When you made that leap into TV, I think the real magic of magic, as we've been talking, is that it happens real time right in front of you. And I think that's why, when there was that huge surge of popularity of magic in Las Vegas, I think it also came at a time, everybody has a cell phone in their pocket. Everybody is watching, how the making of Star Wars and all that. So all of a sudden, the world is being demystified. It's done with a green screen, it's done with a model, so it's hard to impress people. So I think that was part of why that whole live magic thing caught on, because all of a sudden, wait, it's happening real time right in front of me. How did they do that? So was there, when now you're designing for television, knowing that people know, well, there's now this, I'm one time removed from it because there's a screen in front of me. How did that affect your thinking about your design?
Well, it's very different. It's very, very different. And the rules of that are very different. And, back in the olden days, we actually used to have, this is so weird to say, they used to have standards and practices. They used to have someone from standards and practices come to the set of a magic special and make sure that stuff was really happening, that there were no trick shots.
Wow.
Because at that time, of course, networks, were given those licenses by the government. Right. And part of that is if they said, this magic's really happening in front of a live audience, you really had to be doing it in front of a live audience. And that stuff has gotten all soft now. But I would say that it's still an important point. And I, as a guy now with white hair of a certain age who's been in this business long enough, I've always secretly thought that, magic on television is what you have to do to get people to come and see it live. And when you see it live, it's really fantastic. And on television, it can be entertaining and it can be fun and it can be interesting and it can tease you. But when you see it live, and I always hear this from audiences, and we heard this at the Magic Castle, people go, I had no idea that it was this amazing, sitting here 5 feet away while someone's doing this. I never saw this before. So I think it always surprises people still. And I think the television is the kind of allure that you have to be popular on television. You can't have an art form that doesn't work on television today, or it just goes away.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And I think that's why, live magic will always be, as much as technology will progress and we'll see the most amazing things on the screen.
Right.
I think in terms of really wowing people,
Oh, yeah.
live magic. And I think that's true with theme parks too,
Yeah.
when done well, because it's happening real time. I'm in this ride vehicle, or I'm sitting in this theater in a theme park, and wow, it's happening right now.
Yeah.
Right now. There's no screen in front of me. Well, and that's another whole
Yeah,
story.
and
too,
that was
about
big
yeah.
in Vegas
Yeah,
too. I mean,
yeah.
late 90s, early 2000s. I remember you could go and you could see Copperfield, you could see Lance Burton, you could go see
Penn and Teller.
Penn and Teller.
Right.
There were 3 or 4 other. There was a guy with a puppet, and everybody was doing a big magic show on the strip.
Nothing breeds success, like another success. And so, every hotel had to have their magician. There was a period of time that was exactly. And then, of course, it was just like Cirque du Soleil shows. And it was shortly after that, every hotel had to have their Cirque du Soleil show. And now that there are Cirque du Soleil shows, but that stuff, you're just moving through mediums all the time.
Right. Right. Yeah. All right. So tell us now how you went from illusion designer to Imagineer to songwriter for Food Rocks to now writing, books on the history of magic and different magicians and all these wonderful things, all available on Amazon.com.
All available on Amazon. So the weird story is that I always, as I think I said to you when I first came out to LA, I had just finished a technical book about historical magic for magicians. And of course, there's a whole level of literature of magic for magicians, books that magicians collect and buy.
Right.
So I've always
back at the library at the Magic Castle, right?
That's right. Yeah, not out in the public.
Right.
And so I've always been involved in that stuff, and I've always written, and I've done that. And I wrote a book for magicians called Art and Artifice, which was kind of a combination about the history and technology of it. And this has a very weird Disney connection again. I had a friend, Tim Inosco, who some people might remember, who was a consultant in Imagineering, very charismatic, funny guy, kind of like he stepped out of the page, out of the front page. He used to chain smoke, and he used to, he was always up on popular culture, and he was always combining stuff. Really facile, wonderful, amazing, creative guy. And Tim, when he came out here on short trips, he used to stay over at my house.
Okay.
He went in the spare bedroom, and he was an insomniac. He always had trouble sleeping. And one night he picked up my book, which was sitting there, and he read it. And the next morning, Tim said, all bleary-eyed, he said, you always talk about this stuff that you're doing. And he said, I never understood it. But he said, I read your book last night. And he said, you need to explain that to the public. I don't know why you're not telling the public that stuff. You're talking to magicians.
Wow.
So I went to a publisher and put together a proposal. And that was the book that became Hiding the Elephant, which was an LA Times bestseller. And that was a history of magic. And it was about why that technology existed, how magicians developed secrets and why they developed secrets, and how they guarded them and how they protected them all through the years.
So did you have any death threats from other magicians for opening the curtain?
Well, it's really interesting because magicians have a very specific way of viewing that stuff, which is that, of course, they've all learned from those books, right?
Okay.
So the secret, what magicians do, and the attitude is not that you don't publish and you don't share, but that you don't put it in places where it's unexpected. So in other words, you don't put it in a newspaper. You don't open up a newspaper and suddenly start reading about magic. That if you buy a book that's about magic and it says this book is about magic, that the people that buy that book are the people that are interested in that subject.
Okay.
And so the clubs are kind of organized around that way. And so I have done some writing now about magic history for the public, as well as for magicians. And so I've always continued writing for magicians and technical stuff, but I've done a bunch of books and biographies of magicians that were sold for the public as well.
Cool.
So that's been fun, and it's been inspiring. It's always interesting talking to people who pick those up and were kind of drawn to that because they didn't know it existed and became interested.
Awesome. So let's talk about the Magic Castle. You were a president of the Magic Castle.
Yeah.
And for those who don't really know what the castle is and the AMA, maybe you talk a little bit about that.
I know you're a member. The AMA is Academy of Magical Arts, which is probably kind of the most revered, honored magic club in the world. And their clubhouse is the Magic Castle, which is that fantastic Victorian mansion up on the hill in Hollywood that was put together by the Larson family, Bill and Milt Larson, back in the 60s. And it's the Larsons were smart enough to do something that no other magic club did. There were all sorts of magic clubs, the Society of American Magicians and the International Brotherhood of Magicians. But what the Larsons did is they realized if you take magicians and you give them a place to perform and you invite people who want to see magicians perform, now you've got something. Wow. Otherwise, magicians meet somewhere and they talk about performing, but they only perform for themselves.
Right.
And so, what the Magic Castle is this kind of fantastic laboratory of magic where great magicians come and they have the perfect theaters to perform in. Mm-hmm. And audiences come and magicians are given the perfect audiences. Because, of course, there's nothing better than having an audience that's come to see magic. That's like the greatest thing in the world. So it's just been it's a fantastic showplace for all the arts that involve magic. And I'm a longtime member, and as a magician, years ago when Neil Patrick Harris was president, they asked if I would join the board of directors. They had an opening, and so I joined the board and was on it for 6 years, and then was eventually voted in as president. So I was the president for 2 years of the Magic Castle. They, like everything I've had now, I'm no longer president, but they've had a really tough year and a half. Like everything that's live entertainment has had a tough time, but the castle, was successful, has amazing devoted members. They've held on. They did stuff online. They did special programs online. They did virtual shows. And the castle is reopening now. New GM, new business plan, new chef. It looks like it's going to be fantastic. So I hope that's right.
And a new Houdini Seance. Tell us a little bit about what you're cooking up. I did walk through the room last weekend.
Oh, yeah. Look okay?
Yeah, it looks great. A lot of what was there, some of it's gone, but
so this incredibly successful, the original immersive show in Hollywood was the Houdini Seance. Milt Larson opened in the 60s and the 70s. There have been different editions of it. So we just kind of reorganized a different new production of Milt's original concept. And it's you go up for an evening, very elegant evening dinner in its own room, which is a room dedicated to Houdini memorabilia. And at the end of the dinner, they clear the table, a medium comes in, takes you on a tour of the room, explains everything that's in the room, turns out all the lights, and conducts a seance to try to contact Houdini. And in the course of it, you wind up contacting a few other ghosts, and then you finally hear a little from Houdini, and you hear a little about what he thought, and you see a quote unquote psychic performance, which isn't real, but is a fantastic, evening about Houdini and about magic. Yeah. So we're just working on it. We think it's going to be reopening this fall. In fact, we know it's going to be reopening this fall. Just finishing up the effects now. And we're really excited about that.
That's great. So let's move forward to 2025. So we're 4.5 years in the future. It sounds like Beauty and the Beast is coming back to Broadway. You've got a new book, A Christmas Carol. Tell us what's in the next few years.
Working on a couple productions right now. I'm working on a new production of Christmas Carol, which will have already been opened by then, 2022, for the Houston Alley Theater. Their big production, and they want to put magic in it as well. And so, I'm working with always working with a number of magicians, trying to work on new material. And it's always inspiring because, of course, every performer brings something new to the equation. And, that's sort of what you work for, is because you want to work to that performer's sensibilities, because that's what makes it exciting. Right. And I hope that, there are more stage shows in the works. What's always inspiring is putting magic in a show in a way that people don't expect to see it, which is also true of that theme park experience. And so you integrate those things kind of seamlessly, hopefully seamlessly, and they all add to the effect. So the number of things in the works that I hope by 2025 will be up and running.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ryan and I are huge fans of Jim, huge fans of magic and how and the effect it can have on audiences. And there may be something in the future that
Yeah.
we're working on with Jim.
Well, I like it because
Yeah.
it tickles my brain.
Yeah.
And as somebody who's worked sort of behind the scenes and does this every day, if there's something I see that makes me go, wait a minute, how do you do that? I just want to, immerse myself in that. When I see magicians, like if anyone's seen the clairvoyance or people who do this kind of, magic, to me, that's so different from what I've seen before, and I can't explain it.
Yeah, very different approach, really inspiring show. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think as people are, as I said earlier, are getting more and more blasé because of technology being everywhere, I think it's only going to make those kinds of things more powerful.
Yes, absolutely.
That, wow, it's right in front of my eyes. How did they do that?
Yeah.
No screen.
Right. Which brings up our big question of the day and of this tour, as we bring it back to 2021, is now that we've been to all these places, and Jim, you've worked on all these amazing experiences, what do you think it is that makes a guest experience timely yet timeless?
Well, I can tell you the answer to that. I know from a magic point of view, and
that's what we're going to hear.
It's to me, the real secret, and the secret is when something feels like art to you, is that there's an opportunity to revisit it on different levels. For the audience to revisit it on different levels. So, you can experience it. And of course, the way that this used to happen in the old days, the beautiful old days of Leonardo da Vinci, is that you looked at it and you said that looks exactly like a person, but you go, but look at the reality, look at the brush strokes, look at the incredible way that looks real, but isn't real. And I've got it right in front of me. And I think that giving an audience different realities at the same time, that lets them toggle back and forth in their head is a really empowering thing for an audience. And the way I describe it to magicians is, if you have as if you've been given a rheostat, a dial, and you can dial how much you believe it, you can dial how much you're pretending along with it, you can dial how much you're going to challenge it, but that's in your control. So, when a magician says, I know this looks like a little cloth bag, but actually this cloth bag is a time machine. Let me explain to you why. Okay.
Yeah.
He's not really going to make you think that's a time machine. Okay.
Right.
That little cloth bag. But now you've been given a fantasy, and you can either buy into that fantasy, or you can start challenging it in your head, or you can do a little of both at the same time, or you can withdraw and say, let's look at how people are reacting to this. And so you are given the opportunity to revisit this and actually decide on your own reality through it. And I think, as fans of theme park stuff, we're always talking about exactly that. The way that you're completely sucked into it, and then you can come back and start understanding bits of it, of why this is intriguing. Or you can be intrigued by just one element of it, say, how are they doing that? So it gives you the opportunity to revisit it on different levels. And I think that's what's always exciting about art.
Yeah, that's kind of the term brain tickle. That's what it does to me, is I'm like, it's this, but it's this, and you want to re-experience that.
Noticing that, knowing that you're going to have this broad audience, often with, a little kid that's going to be, just probably seeing it more on surface level versus an adult, and people with different level of interests as well, that are going to dive deeper into it.
Right. Yeah.
I think the ultimate of that, we all hear about it, is when audiences or when visitors to the park say, I always loved this ride, but then the last time I was on it, I took my grandkid on it, and I just watched him go through it. And of course, that's like the complete other reality, is now experiencing it vicariously with someone else. So it gives us all those opportunities, and I think that's important.
Awesome.
So do we have time for?
Becky, do we want to take a question or two from our live audience?
Do we have any time? Do you have any questions?
Sure. I think we could probably get 1 or 2 questions in. If you want to write them into the chat for me, then I can get that answered.
Okay.
Or I can't answer. But Jim
not you, Jim.
I know. I've already written them. I already wrote them, and I can't answer them. Yeah.
Anybody?
No.
Live with Jim Steinmeyer on the time machine.
Need to rewind.
On magic.
Go back a couple minutes.
Anything, Becky?
Nope, that's okay.
No.
That's okay.
Wait, one.
You know what? It's
Here
too
we go.
fast.
Here we go. Tim has
All right.
asked, when can we expect the next book? Public or magician centric?
Oh man. You know what? I don't know. I'm working on a couple of things right now, and I've got it. I'm going to the UK to do the new production of Beauty and the Beast tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
Tomorrow, I get on a plane and go to England and do the new production of Beauty and the Beast, which is the 25th anniversary production. And one of the things I'm looking forward to is I'm taking a notebook of things that I have to work on. And I hope that when I come back after this month in England, I'm going to know what my next books are, because I've been working on a few things.
Wow.
There you go.
All right,
looking-
Mr. Runko has asked, who's a new magician you would recommend us seeing? That's a great one.
Oh,
Another great
Good
question.
question.
hey, you know what? They're great. They're really great magicians that you should see. A lot of really interesting close-up magicians and stand-up magicians, because that's a fashion right now. And that's okay. That's completely great. And that's why those guys are there. But I would say that's kind of easy. It's easy to find really interesting guys doing that stuff. Great magician here in LA, classical magician, but such a brilliant sleight of hand artist, John Carney. If he's ever worked in the castle, you should see what he does. It's just fantastic. Wonderful touch, attitude. Young magicians doing stage magic is difficult and rare. And I'll give you two great names, both West Coast based. Alex Ramon, who I worked with in Ringling Brothers Barnum Bailey Circus, unbelievable stage performer, and a guy up in San Francisco who has, with his own venue called the Magic Patio, comes out of the design world, comes out of the high tech world, and has developed his own style of magic. Andrew Evans, yeah.
I'm sorry, say that name again?
Andrew Evans, and the venue is the Magic Patio up in San Francisco.
Okay.
And Alex Ramon is right now in Lake Tahoe working. So yeah, there are really, really good magicians working out there with new styles.
Okay.
Great.
Awesome.
I'm going to try to get one more in. Roberta's going to be mad at me.
Ease it in real
Okay.
quick.
Most people in theme parks know Pepper's Ghost and the use of mirrors in theme parks, but are there any other classic magic techniques you see in a lot of rides that are less talked about?
Oh, good.
Yeah. You know what? So what's interesting? So the reason Pepper's Ghost is so prominent is because it's about combining two images at one time, and so it's a really prominent thing. But yes, I actually, one of the books I wrote, one of the technical books I wrote, is I think still the only book about Pepper's Ghost, which is the history of Pepper's Ghost. And as part of that, I went into the technical aspects of it, of why it changed over the years, how it changed, how it had to change to get into theme parks, why certain aspects of it were different. And as part of that, I put a bunch of other mirror illusions in that book, explaining how they were used by magicians to do similar things, how they were offshoots of that principle. So it's a book that I print for magicians. It's available on my website. It's called The Science Behind the Ghost. And it's a kind of popular history and a technical history of Pepper's Ghost. Yeah.
Okay.
But that's the trick. That's the trick. And those principles were used in slightly different forms through the years.
Yeah.
And Jim, what's your website if people want to buy that book?
Oh, it's jimsteinmeyer.com.
Steinmeyer.com.
Okay.
All right. Well, we're
Jim,
back here in 2021,
There we
and
are.
yes, Jim, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you guys. This was lots of fun. And it was all about me. How much better can that get? But congratulations. Thanks for putting up with it.
Yeah, thank you. We recommend everybody go online, buy Jim's books, check out these magicians, and we will see you in about a month for episode number 4 of the Spirit of the Time Zoomcast. And Becky, why don't you explain who's going to be aboard next time?
And thanks
All right.
again, Jim, and
Thank-
to all
Yes.
those joined us today.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So on behalf of Zeitgeist Design and Production, we want to thank you for spending an hour of your life with us on the Spirit of the Time Zoomcast. And the next Spirit of the Time Zoomcast, we're going to have Passenger, former show producer, sponsorship guru, and the head of Walt Disney Imagineering at Disneyland Paris, Peggy Ferris. Very excited. So may your tomorrow have the nostalgia of the past, the wonder of the present, and the promise of the future. Thank you guys so much again for joining us Till next time.
Get it.